sometimes writing a conclusion can be tricky. It's usually the last thing you write in your essay, and by that point you just want to be done with it and turn it in, and you might make it sloppier than it should be. I encourage you to spend more time on your conclusion because it's actually very important. Why is it important? What's the point of a conclusion? You want your conclusion to wrap everything up. You want to say what you've already said in your essay, but do it in a new and fresh way. You want to restate your thesis in your conclusion, but you don't want to say the exact words of your thesis. You want to write it a little bit differently, and if you do it sneakily enough, your readers might not even know that you're restating it. You want to relate your topic to the world. This is very important. This is pretty much the biggest point of the conclusion, which is, why are you talking about this? Why have I written an entire essay about this? And then you're going to give the punchline of the point of your essay and how it's going to relate to your reader's life or a social problem going on in this time period that also relates to the book. You want to really make sure that your readers know why your essay is so important and make sure they're convinced about your point. I would argue that if you're going to read one paragraph out of whether it be a 3-paragraph essay or a 20-paragraph essay that sums up everything that you need to know, you want to read the conclusion because the conclusion is going to give you the most concise argument of what your essay is trying to say. So you want to spend a lot of time on it. So here's an example of a thesis from the book Brave New World, and even if you haven't read it, that's okay, you'll still get what I'm trying to say. So if the thesis is, Bernard's insight into the artificial nature of his society comes from his weak and selfish character, but rather than despise him for being weak and selfish, he is better understood as a conditioned result of the world state. Now let's look at our conclusion. So in this example of a conclusion, our first sentence is a sentence that's wrapping up what our essay was about. However much individuals may wish to break out of their environment, the philosophies programmed into them by outside forces may make it difficult. So this is what the 3 paragraphs in this particular essay were arguing for, and I'm just summing that up really quickly right now. My next sentence is going to restate my thesis. Bernard is an example of an individual who believed he wanted to break away from society, but his conditioning prevented him. So if you'll see, that is a restatement of the thesis above, but I wrote it a little bit differently, so it's not word for word. And now we're going to relate it to the real world. Through Bernard, Brave New World warns us of the dangers of extreme societal conditioning. So now I've taken it out of the context of just the book and brought it into the context of modern day life. Now this happens to be a very short 3-sentence conclusion that is good for my purposes of teaching you, but your conclusion can be longer than this. There's not a rule that your conclusion has to be 3 or 5 or 7 sentences. As long as it's getting the point across in the way that you want, it's good. So I encourage you to spend time on your conclusion and think of it as the punchline to the essay. You've spent all this time building an argument, and your conclusion is where you can really stick it to the audience why you spent the time to write this essay and why they should listen to you. Think of the conclusion as your reward for writing the essay, for outlining and finding quotes and doing all of this work to build up an argument. Your conclusion is when you have a chance to explain why you spent so much work on it. So take pride in it and spend time on it. Now let's